Now, the focus on Russia-Ukraine war was also in between the meeting that took place between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Donald Trump. Now, the one message that was loud and clear was that India is not a neutral country but stands with peace. Trump also agreed, said, want the bloodshed to end. Listen in.
आप जानते हैं मैं रशिया और यूक्रेन दोनों से लगातार संपर्क में रहा हूं। मैं स्वयं भी दोनों देश की मुलाकात कर चुका हूं। बहुत से लोगों का एक भ्रम है कि भारत न्यूट्रल है। मैं साफ करना चाहता हूं, भारत न्यूट्रल नहीं है। हमारा अपना एक पक्ष है और हमारा पक्ष है शांति, पीस। और मैंने इसी एक हमारे सिद्धांत को लेकर के राष्ट्रपति पुतिन की हाजिरी में मीडिया के सामने स्पष्ट रूप से कहा था कि युद्ध का समय नहीं है। और आज भी मेरा कन्विक्शन है कि युद्ध के मैदान में समस्याओं के समाधान नहीं निकलते हैं, अल्टीमेटली वार्ता के टेबल पर ही होते हैं। और भारत का लगातार प्रयास रहा है कि दोनों लोग जिसमें मौजूद हो वैसे फोरम में बातचीत होगी, तब कोई रास्ता निकलेगा। राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप जो प्रयास कर रहे हैं, मैं उनका स्वागत करता हूं, समर्थन करता हूं और मैं चाहता हूं कि राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप हो सके उतना जल्दी सफल हो ताकि दुनिया में शांति के रास्ते खुले।
And to discuss more on this, I have with me Dr. Jagannath Panda, Head of Stockholm Center for South Asian and Indo-Pacific Affairs, and Prameet Pal Chaudhary, who is the head of the South Asia Eurasia Group. Thank you so much, both of you, to join me at this hour. Let me come to you, Dr. Panda, first. How do you see this development coming forward after Trump and Modi meet?
I think there are two issues we need to understand. One is that there is a lot of complementarity between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump. But that doesn't mean that there is a complementarity between the Indian approach and the American approach. As we have seen previously, under the Biden administration, under the Democrats, India and US were holding two different approaches when it comes to Ukraine war. So I think Prime Minister Modi's visit to US and meeting President Trump and having a discussion about Ukraine itself implies that there is a complementarity emerging. And I think we are going in the right direction, at least to create a pressure zone on both sides, on the Ukrainian side and on the Russian side, to talk about the peace, building on the Munich conference and also the US Vice President visiting Europe. There is a lot of complementarity is building, and this needs to be welcomed. But more than that, I think also what is critical here is how the negotiation is going to happen. And I think there are three brief issues I would like to mention. One, that whether Ukraine is going to be a part of NATO in future. I think that would be the bargaining deal. And as far as Russia is concerned, I think they would like to bargain hard that Ukraine at any cost should not be inducted to NATO at any cost. And I think that would be one of the most important points. The second point is I think here the European community would also like to secure their security with the Trump administration. Third, I think probably with President Putin, President Trump would like to have a bilateral particular chemistry to say that, okay, at least let's stop the war if we are unable to end the war. And I think, therefore, the negotiation will be critical.
Right. Mr. Chaudhary, if you can, lay down some examples on what negotiations can look like during this meeting, on what terms will Russia and Ukraine agree to end this war?
So, I mean, the point is that the way the Trump administration has initiated the negotiations is very Trump-like, but very unusual, in which he basically just rings up and says, hey, look, this is what I think each side should accept. Or in this case, really just with one side. He's also issued demands to Putin as well. You have to accept this. Now, Putin obviously is already beginning the process of slowing that down, because negotiations in such a complicated issue may take a much longer time. But by basically stating that America would not support Ukraine joining NATO, that America feels that the territory that Russia has already occupied should more or less remain with Russia. He has effectively preempted Ukraine from being able to push forward anything. Because what the problem is that while Europe may complain and say this is unacceptable, we stand with Ukraine, Ukraine's position has to be known and taken into account. Without American weapons, it is impossible for Ukraine to sustain its war effort. So therefore, in a way, if Trump holds to this position, Ukraine will have to fold, in my view. There is simply no way that it can sustain its war effort without American support. The question is, given that Trump has a habit of saying things up front and then slowly walking them back, he's done that at least on his trade negotiations and his positions in bilateral relationship, will he do the same thing in regarding Ukraine? We don't know. And my sense is that what we are going to be seeing is a team going there right now, seeing how far they can push it, to some degree bullying Europe and Ukraine on this issue, and then coming back and saying, okay, we've got a rough idea of what we can and cannot do in this situation.
Right.
But keep in mind, as I've said, without American support, it is impossible
Right.
for Ukraine to sustain this war.
Right. Dr. Panda, looking forward and looking behind actually to the relationship that India shares with Russia and India shares with Ukraine. We have seen Vladimir Putin meeting Modi, then Zelensky meeting Modi. How do you think and how much important is it for India to play a mediator role here?
I think there has always been a high expectation from India, particularly given the fact that India maintains a fine balance between Russia and the Western outfits with the Western powers, including with the European Union and its member states. And I think last several years, even though the Ukraine war is on, India's relationship with the European Union is improving steadily. And keeping that perspective in mind, I think there is a high expectation. But what is more important here is that I think the larger European world, particularly Ukraine, expects that India should be very forthcoming in terms of articulating Ukraine's position, Ukraine's territorial as well as political position to President Putin. And I think this is where they are banking on Modi's personal chemistry with President Putin. And therefore, India has a larger role to play in terms of passing the messages, in terms of creating that necessary political will, which is required to build peace at this moment.